All right, well, thank you so much to the organizers for having me and for everyone for being here today. It's truly an honor to be able to participate in this incredible event with you all. I'm going to be talking about a project that I have been working on for the last decade and then a newer project that I've been working on for the last few years. So for the last decade, I have been working alongside faculty partners, undergraduate students and graduate students, library professionals, community members, public school teachers, and secondary education students in my semi-rural Virginia community in the United States to recover the histories of a local Black educator named Lucy F. Sims and the segregation-era school in Harrisonburg, Virginia that was named in her honor. Born enslaved in 1856, Lucy F. Sims received her degree from Virginia's Hampton Institute and eventually settled in Harrisonburg to teach over 1,800 students from 3 generations of families. The Lucy F. Sims School, which you can see here, was built soon after her death and served African American students from all over Rockingham County and beyond between 1938 and 1965, while schools were still segregated in the US South. When the Harrisonburg school system was integrated in 1965, so Black and white students brought together into the same schools, the Sims School was closed over the objections of Black families. So rather than integrating both schools, they closed the Black school entirely. Many of the Black school teachers lost their jobs, many Black residents felt that an important center of community life had been lost. The school's records were not preserved, and when the building reopened as a community center in 2005, there was no record of its history on display. And so you can see here a picture of what the school looked like, the interior looked like when we started work on this project. You can see the walls are empty. And what we did over the course of about a year and a half was brought together a team of about 60 community partners, which included dozens of former Sims School students who were elderly at that point, 2 faculty members, and 18 undergraduates who collaborated to create a permanent exhibit, website, and companion booklet telling the history of the school. And so you can see here our students, since the records were not preserved, we did this by conducting what we called memory parties with former students, kind of listening to their stories, recording their stories, scanning their photographs from private family albums. Everything was post-custodial, meaning that we digitized and then returned the original photos to our partners. So here's 2 students working with Jennifer Vickers at one of these memory parties. Younger version of me in the background. And we did all of this to create this exhibit, so now you can see what the school looks like now with all of these panels, over 60 panels, telling the story of the school lining the walls of the hallway. We now have 5 permanent exhibits because we've installed copies, not only so that there's a full exhibit at the Sims School, but we've also installed permanent copies of the exhibit at all of the local high schools that are active. So in Harrisonburg and the surrounding counties, we created a traveling exhibit. That's at Harrisonburg High School. We created a traveling exhibit which has toured libraries and community centers around the region. And we have also created some satellite exhibits like this one, which is in the conference room of the Sims Center, formerly the 2nd grade classroom, and we turned that room into a new exhibit honoring the former 2nd grade teacher at the Sims School, Mary Awkward Fairfax, who is one of the most beloved teachers at the school. In addition, we've also done a lot of work on the website, so we now have an archive, a post-custodial digital archive of over 1,000 photographs, all from people kind of crowdsourced from former students who are willing to share their private photographs with the project. And that's the website. And then we also created translations. We live in a pretty diverse community where, at least 50% of the students in the high school speak either Spanish or Arabic as their native language, and so we have created Spanish and Arabic translations of the exhibit so that students and families can access it by QR code. And then in addition, most recent project was we worked with some teachers in the Rockingham County school system to have their students conduct oral histories with former Sims students, so with the kind of older generation. So they were trained, it was part of their African American history elective class, they were trained in how to do oral history, they learned all about the school, and then they interviewed the elders in our community, and the oral histories have now been transcribed and are preserved as part of the kind of digital archive that's on the website. And you can see some of the students conducting their interview with some of the former Sims students here. So this is the project that we started with. And with this project, Celebrating Sims, our goal was to commemorate both the school and the teachers that served for decades as a cornerstone and caretakers of Harrisonburg's Black community, a project that we understood as building on the work of Black feminist scholars who've emphasized the undervalued work of grassroots leaders, local communities, and Black women in enacting social change. Many of the teachers at Sims were women, and they were really foundational in kind of holding the community together, training the next generation. In addition to our embrace of Black feminist historiography, we organized our work around three major principles. First, the ethic of care, which emphasizes an appreciation of context, interdependence, and vulnerability alongside a commitment to personal, worldly action and response. Two, the public humanities principle of shared authority, in which the interpretive and meaning-making process is shared rather than being sort of held onto by the researcher alone. And then third, the principles of design justice, which prioritizes design's impact on the community over the intentions of the designer and emphasizes sustainable, community-led, and community-controlled outcomes. Guided by these principles, we worked side by side with our community partners to produce what historian Manning Marable calls a living history of the local Black community, one that importantly adds to and complicates more familiar national narratives that tend to silence or marginalize Black people's experience. There are many such small projects on Black history and culture, projects that do public work in both digital and in non-digital spaces. Like many of them, Celebrating Sims involves countless collaborators and supporters, including local residents, government officials, high school students, graduate students, college students, teachers, professors, administrators, librarians, archivists, designers, and more. And like many small projects, it also runs on incredibly limited resources, including small university and regional grants, voluntary commitments from faculty, staff, and community partners, and student involvement through coursework, independent studies, and department-sponsored assistantships. For me and my primary research partner on the project, an engaged learning scholar named Sean McCarthy, finding new ways to grow and sustain the project over the years, and we're now 10 years in, has represented a profound joy, but it has also brought with it a sense of responsibility and concern. How do we keep this going? How can we compensate the hours our colleagues, students, and community partners have poured into the project? How do we let people beyond our local community know about its value? We know there are other projects out there doing this kind of work. How do they do it? Where are they? Where are they not? Where are there important stories that are not yet being told? What if we were better connected? How might we come together to make this work easier? Mapping the Black digital and public humanities was our answer to these questions. Launched in 2023, Mapping BDPH is a relational database that contains sortable and searchable information about over 650, and soon to be 750, Black studies projects in the overlapping fields of the digital and public humanities. This choice to include both digital and public humanities work in Black studies under one umbrella was motivated by our own experience working on a semi-rural project that has a relatively small digital footprint, or at least that's only part of the project. For our community partners, working in meaningful public spaces and reaching audiences who didn't have access to the internet was more important than having a digital platform. In creating this new database, we wanted to honor similar projects for whom public spaces and audiences are sometimes better reached offline. At the same time, we also wanted to honor those for whom we know digital tools and platforms have been absolutely transformative. Drawn by our experience working on a small project that often felt isolated from the larger field, we imagined mapping BDPH with two mutually reinforcing goals in mind. First, finding. We wanted to make it easier to find digital and public projects about Black history and culture, amplifying the hard work of our fellow project creators and making it easier for them to connect with new audiences. And second, founding. On the strength of this increased visibility, we hope to make it easier to see gaps, intersections, and possibilities, and thereby found coalitions across similar projects to be able to better share the load or learn from one another's strategies. The positive response the project has received since its launch has confirmed our feeling that others in the field have been hungry for this visibility, connection, and exploration that our project aims to provide. And yet, just as we've experienced with Celebrating Sims, the many joys this project has brought us has also brought a deep sense of responsibility and concern. Currently, we are wrestling with how to more meaningfully connect with the hundreds of project creators from around the world whose work is featured on our site, such that we can ensure that they feel the same sense of ownership and shared authority in this project as did our local collaborators on Celebrating Sims. We're further concerned about the ethical issues tied to amplifying the work of Black studies practitioners during uncertain political times. How do we continue to support, celebrate, and amplify these projects? In other words, how do we care for them without unintentionally exposing them to hostile audiences? How do we build productive alliances and coalitions if public digital spaces no longer feel safe to everyone in our community? I will sketch my initial thoughts on these questions in what follows, beginning by recounting how mapping BDPH came into being, focusing on the grassroots manner in which a group of students, professors, and digital project experts worked to build the project. I will then consider our next steps, keeping in mind the ethical questions and uncertainties we face as stewards of this project, and exploring why, despite these uncertainties, we feel that mapping the Black digital and public humanities and the grassroots approach to finding and founding that inform the project are more important now than ever. Mapping BDPH is an interdisciplinary, one second. Oh, there it is, that's a picture of what it looks like. Interactive and searchable map of digital and public humanities projects related to Black history and culture. So each of these sort of dots here represents a project. If it's green, it means it's a primarily digital project. If it's red, it means it's primarily non-digital. I lost my space. Although the project enables multiple modes of access to this database, and you can see here we have a kind of search function, allows you to filter and then to see a list of projects, and we've also created some initial visualizations to start mapping what's happening in the field. But we turn to mapping as our primary mode because we see mapping as a double operation that landscape architect James Corner calls finding and founding, which means to make visible what's already there and to use this visibility to build a foundation for new futures. We use Corner's theorization of mapping to think about how we might enrich the Black digital and public humanities practice, both by finding what's there and founding new possibilities for the field. We also understand mapping through the lens of Kimberly Crenshaw's definition of mapping the margins. And I think that my quote, I'm sorry, is blocked out by the translation, as a kind of locating that makes possible new strategies and solutions. As Crenshaw argues, when there's no name for a problem, you can't see a problem. When you can't see a problem, I lost it. You pretty much can't solve it. In this, we see ourselves as closely aligned with the call from Sophia Noble, Michelle Caswell, and Nishani Fraser to theorize different models for doing DH work by voicing the interests of those who are sidelined by traditional infrastructures and methodologies, and by promoting a liberatory praxis grounded in Black visibility, shared authority, and the ethic of care. In other words, for us, finding means not only amplifying the diverse range of projects in the field or changing the composition of the archive, as Miriam Posner puts it, but also making visible other unique interests and needs and using this knowledge to found new coalitions, infrastructures, strategies, and methodologies better suited to address them. When we first began theorizing this work, we turned to several existing resources, including the Colored Conventions Project's crowdsourced Google Doc of Black DH projects, reviews in digital humanities, project registry, and the project registry managed by Humanities for All, which is primarily public humanities projects. These resources draw on expert and community-sourced information to increase the visibility, build capacity, and illustrate possibilities of their respective fields. We embarked on our own project with a sense of indebtedness to these predecessors, while also excited about how our experience working on a local historical recovery project might help us contribute in useful ways. Since location was so important to celebrating Sims, we were inspired by work such as Alex Heal's Around DH in 80 Days, which raised awareness of the existence of DH around the globe by publishing a curated list on a global map. What could be learned, we wondered, if it were possible to sort Black digital and public humanities projects by location or by other aspects of their design, such as funding, labor, and authorship, all the things that had made Celebrating Sims such a joy and a challenge to sustain. Mapping BDPH does the work of finding by drawing on Tableau Public's analytic tools to create an interactive map and other visualizations of a searchable database of Black DH projects. In addition to offering users numerous ways to search and sift the database, the site has individual pages for each project in the database, information about our sources, our process, our team, our labor ethics, and our glossary of terms. This approach is designed to make more visible the rich geographical, topical, and structural diversity of Black DH and public humanities projects, and to make it easier for all of us to see, understand, and support the plurality of circumstances that shape Black digital and public humanities praxis. As a first step toward founding or building community and new coalitions across these projects, we also launched a biannual newsletter to announce new additions to the Mapper website, project team news, graduate student accomplishments, and spotlights of individual projects. We invite feedback with every newsletter and include links to our user feedback survey and open submission form, such that our list of external partners can give input and help grow the project. In this, we are trying to show our long-term commitment to honoring the constructed and fluid, porous, and alive nature of the field with a call and response methodology that is equally dynamic, dynamic rather than static, as well as fundamentally grounded in shared authority, grassroots growth, and the ethic of care. The approach to mapping BDPH grew out of our prior experience of finding undervalued Black stories and founding coalitions of faculty, students, practitioners, and community partners committed to recovering them. In Celebrating Sims, we did this through a slow process of relationship building and power sharing, working in stages using small pockets of available resources to make big things happen. With this new project, my partner Sean McCarthy and I began in the fall of 2022 by reaching out to Kevin Haig, head of digital projects at JMU Libraries. And then we had the great fortune of bringing on board graduate student Ileana Cosme Brooks, who was able to use her department-sponsored graduate assistantship to research over 400 projects in the field and begin compiling them into a multi-category database. Working iteratively with Ileana, we started widening our circle of collaborators by reaching out to other colleagues in the field and spent the semester working with them to refine those categories and the data. By the end of the semester, we had enough material to incorporate the project into a graduate class that I was teaching on the Black digital humanities. My students spent the first half of the semester exploring major projects and scholarship in the field and considering key questions regarding design practice, labor ethics, funding structures, and more. And then they used this knowledge to comb through and refine the data before reaching out individually to each project in the database. By opening this channel of communication, we were able to ensure that our data accurately represented each project and that we had each project's creators' consent to include their work on the map. Project creators were asked to provide input into the terms we used to categorize them, their work, and to submit new projects using our open submission form. Our student collaborators were credited by name on the website and encouraged to present and publish their work on the project. And here are some of their presentations. When the project launched in late spring 2023, It garnered over 60,000 views on social media, and we received countless private messages of emails and emails of support, thanks, and thoughtful contribution from users and other project creators. Since then, we've been delighted to see the website's audience grow to over 3,000 active users, an early testament, we hope, to the project's value to our community and the broader public. Like the Celebrating Sims project that inspired it, Mapping BDPH intentionally blurs traditional distinctions between research, teaching, and service in favor of the student and community-oriented activist intellectual tradition of Black studies. This activist intellectual orientation also aligns with calls from both Black studies and public humanities practitioners to bring the digital humanities outside of the more traditional and hierarchical frameworks of the academy. As Jesse Stommel argues in his essay collection, Disrupting the Digital Humanities, a public digital humanities is built around networked learning communities, not repositories for content. And its scholarly product is a conversation, one that engages a broad public while blurring the distinction between research, teaching, service, and outreach. Following Stommel, we are now looking forward to ensuring that Mapping BDPH is not just a repository of projects, which is sort of currently what it is, but a lively home for conversation that engages a broader public. Indeed, as Corner's theorization of mapping suggests, finding and founding are linked. The amplification that finding does needs to serve to found new perspectives, ideas, and coalitions. As we've worked on Mapping BDPH, other projects have come online that offer new and intriguing models for founding community and collaboration, such as Digital Ethnic Futures Consortium, Life X Code, and Around DH, which is the follow-up to Around DH in 80 Days. These projects use a combination of strategies, including mini-grants, symposia, and surveys, to develop digital humanities work that is engaged with minoritized communities, to illuminate what happens outside the academy, and to engage project creators in fundamental questions about the meaning of their work. We wonder how we might facilitate connections among practitioners that foster creative coalition work while also giving smaller and less well-connected projects a bigger voice and sense of belonging in the field. As we look forward, we are also hoping to expand the database's geographical and disciplinary reach. The most cursory glance at our map will reveal that the represented projects exist largely within the continental United States. So an important strategic goal for us is to expand the reach of the database beyond US borders. And there are linguistic questions that we have to be thinking about in this as well, since many of the projects in South America, for example, are in Spanish. And so how do we represent, and I hope this conference is a great place for me to be thinking about how we might represent these multilingual projects in a single map. We're inspired by work done by the Network for Digital Humanities in Africa, the edited collection Afro-Latinx Digital Connections, as well as the edited collection Digital Black Atlantic, as well as Chow Mena's work on decolonial approaches to digital public history, in which she argues that such work is an iterative and reflective practice that requires us to center human connection and build communities of practice across multiple frontiers. Reorganizing the cultural and linguistic challenges that come with making Mapping BDPH truly, recognizing the challenges that come with making Mapping BDPH truly global, we plan to take our time. Annual symposia in collaboration with representatives from different parts of the African diaspora will help us figure out how to do this work while guided by the principles of care, shared authority, and design justice. Our interest in improving Mapping BDPH's geographical coverage also extends as much to the global as it does to the local, and future symposia will also focus on Black public humanities projects, especially locally oriented projects that don't have a big digital footprint. Now, with the collaboration of two new team members, Dr. Courtney Murray Ross and Dr. Fawn Amber Montoya, coming to us from the Colored Conventions Project and the Communities of Ludlow project, respectively, we are considering several new directions for Mapping BDPH's next phase of development. Our goals are threefold. First, visualizing the data. To enhance the usability of our database, we want to create new dashboards that make it easier to search and browse projects by topic or type, data visualizations and analyses that offer meta-analyses of the field, and an open access downloadable version of our database that's been vetted for privacy concerns. We see these new resources offering a wider range of intellectual pathways into the data that reveal trends, gaps, and opportunities in the field, which might enable scholars, funders, and community organizers to do new data-rich research, make data-informed decisions, and advocate for more equitable resource distribution. Curating connections to promote dialogue, community building, and resource sharing within our community. We want to develop digital exhibits that showcase projects organized around shared topics, geographies, or methodologies, and use companion social media platforms to promote dialogue and community building. Our hope is that these activities will elevate the visibility of individual projects while also fostering connections, collaboration, and mutual care. And then engaging new audiences. Finally, to encourage greater public engagement with BDPH projects, we want to create how-to videos that make our website more accessible to non-academic audiences, research guides aimed at integrating the project into library resources, and a education lesson plan discovery tool aimed at helping high school teachers and students find relevant projects within the database. Our goal here is to democratize access to BDPH projects, helping to make these projects more accessible to classrooms, libraries, and public forums, and broadening the audience for Black digital and public humanities work. Together, our hope is that growing Mapping BDPH in these ways will offer the field important new tools for teaching, learning, research, and public engagement. Still, even as we consider these new directions, we must also acknowledge the increasing precariousness of our work. Since the viral launch of Mapping BDPH on Twitter in spring 2023, the transition of Twitter's ownership has precipitated significant shifts in moderation policies, resulting in a notable exodus of users. This phenomenon has subsequently manifested across multiple social media platforms, rendering many conventional digital spaces increasingly problematic for community building initiatives. The diminished moderation infrastructures exacerbates pre-existing challenges such as misinformation, antagonism, decontextualization, and surveillance concerns. While projects directed by scholars with tenure in the United States who have some sort of job protection, untenured and contingent faculty, as well as students, staff, and community members may feel the pressures produced by this hostility differently. In our efforts to find and to found, we must find ways to understand, represent, and protect the varying needs of Mapping BDPH's diverse community of practitioners. Likewise, almost as soon as we began to feel ready to go after major grant funding to support Mapping BDPH's development, many of the grants supporting such work in the United States coming out of the National Endowment for the Humanities were completely shut down. And US federal granting agencies have been forbidden to fund anything that could be construed as DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, which often means Black stuff, right? Therefore, as we consider how to balance our interests in finding and founding new projects and networks while trying to protect our partners from either being starved of resources or flooded with harassment, ridicule, and abuse, we are turning to the very iterative power-sharing practices that inspired our original turn to this project. We grew Celebrating SIMS slowly over time, setting small goals each year, including secondary education plans, oral histories, all the stuff I showed you. With Mapping BDPH, we can do the same. We can work with our students at our home university to develop data visualizations and digital exhibits. We can reach out to library networks to share the project on their resources. We can move our social media activities from Twitter to Blue Sky to reach a less hostile audience, and we can transition our biannual newsletter to a public-facing Substack that invites broader engagement. And then also, as I mentioned, we can organize symposia that kind of help people work with us to create coalitions, share strategies, and grow our map. Most importantly, just as Celebrating SIMS had an advisory board that shaped each stage of the project, we have now created a new advisory board for this one, which will help us find careful and caring new ways to grow our community, bring our local and global partners in closer conversation, and reach out to the broader public. It's hard not to see the current political climate in the US as an existential threat to the Black digital and public humanities, not only because of growing public hostility to anything associated with DEI, but also because of the US government's efforts to cut federal grants and university funding for such initiatives. And yet, as Terry Baxter writes, in dangerous times, solidarity and mutual aid can be vital in a community's ability to survive. For us, this political climate only speaks to how important it remains to amplify the liberatory work being done in Black digital humanities and public humanities spaces, and to build stronger coalitions to support them. Indeed, if anything, the current squeeze on federal funding and on US universities and academic freedom more broadly suggests that the small, grassroots power and resource sharing methodologies that we originally hoped to support with this project are now more important than ever. Thank you.